Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we're going to talk about D&D a little bit, and I'm going to talk about what it's like playing a completely insane character, because that is where I am at this point. My my half-orc paladin, highly original class and race combination, I know. The things have not gone well for her, and she is now in an interesting position, and I talk about this enough on Twitter and on Discord that people basically keep saying, why don't you just make a video? Here is the video. So yeah, we're just going to start this, I guess it probably will be a series, depending on how well, no, it probably will just be a series anyway, I don't care how well it does. And I'm going to talk about the ridiculous, off-the-rails trajectory my paladin has taken. Before we get into this, I will just throw out there that it's not everything that I talk about in this video is something that you personally would implement. I realise that. There are many ways to play D&D. There are some campaigns that are almost entirely RP with hardly any combat. There are some campaigns that are all about min-maxing. There are some that are simple. I've spoken to someone who just dungeon crawls. It's like every session is a dungeon crawl. That is what they've set themselves up for. That's what they want to do. That's how they enjoy playing the game, and that's absolutely grand. And I'm glad that basically the rule set is versatile enough that you can make whatever you want. Gothic horror, low magic, high fantasy, Wild West style shit if you want to. Basically, you can do whatever you like, and that's one of the things that's so great about D&D. So bear in mind that whilst some of this stuff you're going to listen to and go, that sounds OP, that sounds terrible, I'd never do that, you don't have to. It works for us, it works for the campaign we're running. Everyone who is part of that campaign is on board with everything that's happened, and yeah, I guess that's it. That's just the pre-warning. Not going to think that everything I say is necessarily a good idea, but then it doesn't matter because you don't have to implement it, and it has no bearing on your campaign anyway. So let's go straight in. What I'll do very quickly is lay down a couple of the ground rules for the world that we're in. It is a homebrew world, and there's a couple of variations from, I guess, your standard fantasy template, if you want to put it that way, although that sounds bad because it sounds lazy, but that's not what I mean. You know what I mean? Changes to fantasy stuff that you'd expect from D&D. Firstly, orcs can't do magic. It is not possible. Orcs and half-orcs, if you've got orcish blood, you're shit out of luck, no magic for you. I've already said that my character's a half-orc paladin, so you're probably already thinking, okay, how does that work? We'll get to that. There is also only a few gods. It's not a huge pantheon of gods, or at least not officially. There are a few official gods. If you worship those gods, you are grand, you are dandy, because essentially the churches of these gods are, for the most part, in control of the land and make the rules. If you worship anything other than these gods, who are official and no other gods exist honest, you are shit out of luck. You are a heretic. You will be dealt with. I know you'll all approve of a heretic thing. I mean, who wouldn't? There's also rifts, whereby a portal into another plane will just spawn out, wreck the surrounding countryside, and you can go rift delving, go into the rift, go into another plane, find some treasury stuff, and get out again. Yeah, I think that's the basic changes, I guess. So I have a half-orc paladin who was made one afternoon when we first sort of talked about playing D&D and starting this campaign, and my good friend Mike invited me to start playing. I'd never played before. I didn't really know what I was doing. We went through the player's handbook, and I was like, I like half-orc. Half-orc looks cool. Strength, I want to hit things. Grand. And then I thought, I don't just want to hit things, and I know full well that probably I will find something like fighter probably a little bit dull eventually. I'd quite like to do the classic combo of hitting things and healing things. So, of course, Paladin was the way forward. And, of course, half-orcs can't do magic, which I'd completely forgotten that was a stipulation as I was going through the book. But when I said I wanted to be a half-orc Paladin, Mike said, that's fine, we will work into the story. Perhaps you're the only half-orc who can do magic. And I was like, that's cool, I like that. Again, probably not massively original, but hey, it was my first character, never played before. Cut me some slack. The backstory for the character was also written down, I believe, on like an A5 sheet of paper, and it had no detail of any kind. She didn't even have a last name. Her name was simply Sheer, and I wasn't prepared to come up with last names, and so she didn't have a last name. She, being a half-orc who could do magic, was discovered at a very early age, and she was taken off to a gladiator pit. She thought that she was being smuggled out to a safe place, and that she'd been sold without her parents knowing to this gladiator pit, which essentially used her as an attraction. Look at this half-orc who you can beat the shit out of, and then they heal themselves. Miraculous. Amazing. That would be 5 gold for the privilege of watching. You get the idea. That has since turned out to be untrue. She was sent there by... She thinks her father actually just full-on sent her there so she would learn to be strong, because she would need to be, because she is a little bit of a freak compared to every other orc and half-orc, because she can do magic. That is a storyline that is still ongoing. I feel like the kind of conclusion to that arc is pretty close to being done, so I'm kind of excited to see exactly what the thinking was there. And trying to work out whether she actually would kill her own father, which a little hard to tell at the moment. So her magical abilities were a mystery to her. She didn't know why she could do them. All she knew was she was taken away when she was very young. She spent years and years in this arena, in this fighting pit, and on the same day that the person that she finally had some sort of connection with, that she had finally found someone else in this like awful hellhole place that she'd been living for most of her life, the same day that they died in a 2v2 fight that she was part of, she was also released, and she has no idea why. She was cut loose and spent years basically just wandering around avoiding everything consumed by grief. It's kind of dark, honestly, for a first character backstory. I don't know why I went there. I've no idea why I was like, yeah, let's give this character a lifetime of misery before she meets the party. That's great. But I did. So, you know, as I say, probably not massively original, but it was what we came up with at the time. It seemed to... I liked the gladiator background, but I didn't just want to be like some sort of glory hog because I didn't think that fit the idea of a paladin, but I still wanted to be a paladin because I wanted to be able to heal and hit hard. So, you know, it was kind of a mishmash of different ideas, and that's basically what it ended up as. So the discovery, as we've gone along during the campaign, the discovery was made that the reason she can do magic is that she was selected to be the champion of the goddess of fate and justice, who is not an official god. She technically does not exist. Or at least she officially doesn't exist. If you worship her, you will obviously be deemed a heretic and probably killed. So Sheer has the unique double whammy of being an orc, a half orc that can do magic, which shouldn't exist, who worships a god that also technically shouldn't exist. She's like double heresy all the way. And she was selected as a champion because her own fate was kind of shrouded. The goddess of fate and justice could not see her fate. It was clouded from her, and she couldn't see her future, which is the way she selects her champions. One of the other party members is the champion of justice. So we have Sheer, the champion of fate, and then Saskia, the champion of justice, a paladin and a cleric. It's nice. I like the symmetry and I like the way it works. And one of the things that comes along with those two positions are unique abilities. Now, everyone in the party has got one. So we've got an artificer and we've got a monk as well. We did have a bard, but the player who had the bard switched out to a monk. And each character has got like a unique thing that they can do on top of their class abilities. Now, this is one of the things where a lot of people will sit there and go, that sounds OP, that sounds terrible, I would never do that. With Van, it actually works pretty well. Mike is very good at balancing encounters to make sure that they are still difficult without being unfair. We don't just blow through everything. Most encounters are very well balanced. And to be honest, on the times where it's not balanced, it's nothing to do with the actual encounter, it's simply rolling. Like both sides rolling terribly for every single attack and just failing to hit each other. Stuff like that you cannot control. For the most part, despite the extra stuff that we have on top of what we can normally do, you know, there's extra stuff, but it's not affected the game all that much. It's made for some excellent moments, but it hasn't really... It's never broken anything, you know. It might sound overpowered, but in practice, it never has been. So the monk has a kind of a resurrection thing, kind of like rises back from death like a phoenix, has a big phoenix tattoo on his back. If he gets taken down to 0 and it's charged, he can basically absorb power around him, fueled by sunlight. He's a sun soul monk, and come back to life. and wreck people with fire damage in the process. It's pretty cool. The Artificer has got a couple of different things like rocket boots, and the Artificer's gun is very different. It's had modifications and stuff like that. And I believe he can also, I think he has Hex from a previous demon-based experience that he had. The cleric, who is the champion of justice for this goddess that shouldn't exist, can basically turn into an avatar of justice. So gets bigger, starts out dwarf-sized, gets like Goliath-sized, and is tankier and hits a little bit harder. Just things like that. It's like little additions to the characters to make them more unique, and so far they have not at any point assisted in us just wiping something out. We still get the shit kicked out of us on a very regular basis, which is nice, to be honest. My character has an ability that I'd never really properly thought about the consequences of until there was a bad moment, a really bad moment. So my character Sheer, my half-orc paladin, has the ability to alter fate. So part of this kind of approach to fate and futures and so on is that there are the paths of fate. You can, if you have this ability, if you have the capability to do so, you can step off the path that you are on, investigate other paths to see where they lead, and switch onto that alternate path. It sounds complicated. The mechanic is simply that once per long rest, and at the cost of exhaustion, I can change a single dice roll affecting my character to any number. It's a d20 roll. So, for instance, I mean, I've used it to crit quite a few times, because doing a crit as a paladin, with a level 2 smite, for instance, which is the last time I used it, it's kind of tasty. It does a lot of damage. And using Great Weapon Master as well, which I can do, adding another 10 damage on top of that, you can properly pump out a fairly hefty single target nuke. You can really wreck someone's day with that. And for a while, that was mostly what I used it for. It was just like, haha, I can make this one person explode into gore. You might think, well, that's very open to abuse. I think probably I wasn't really seeing the full potential of it, because that was mostly the use it got. It was like, oh, this dude, this knight thinks he's got something on me. No, I'm just going to fucking evaporate the dude, just straight up. I'm just going to murder him. Again, other people might look at that and go, I would never give that to my players. There's no way they would use it to break the game. I never thought like that. A big part of our campaign is the RP, it's the story, it's a narrative campaign. And so things like using it to specifically abuse game mechanics just simply never crossed my mind, because it's not something... If it's not something that my character wouldn't do, it's just not going to happen. And my character would not find a way to game the system to, unleash some sort of god-awful apocalypse with one lucky roll or something stupid like that. Like, she just wouldn't do that, and so it's never come up. But for the most part, it was things like, I need this thing to die. Okay, I've managed to kill it. Thank God for that. We were about to lose 2 people. That was totally worth it. And then, of course, exhausted for the rest of the day. It's been things like avoiding attacks that would otherwise kill my character. So, she has used it to get out of being crushed to death. She's used it to influence conversations. So if there's something that we absolutely need to know, and I've rolled a 1 on persuasion, she will take a little walk and try and find the path where she gets the wording just right, that this person opens up and tells them what they need to know. It's all been stuff like that. It's never been like how best can I fuck up this world the DM has made for me? I'm just not that kind of player, So that is what she can do. That is a unique ability to her. And she went insane through the use of that ability. Like, she properly lost her shit as a direct result of stepping off the path she was on and going onto a different path. And it was one of those things where I did it without really thinking about the consequences of it. So we'd been on the trail of a cult that was attempting to summon the Abyss into the material plane. The Abyss would just consume absolutely everything and there would be nothingness forever. Not ideal. So we were trying to track them down and prevent that from happening. We found their little hideout. We in a underground fortress at the bottom of a cavern. Went into the cavern and an ambush had been set up for us, which not particularly, that you'd expect that they would try and stop people from disrupting this ritual that would mean the end of the world. And they did. And it was skeletons that exploded on you and displacer beasts with collars that controlled them. And it was a difficult fight, and it was difficult because I was rolling really badly for a start. I don't think I made a single save against any of the skeletons as they walked up and detonated on us. And relatively quickly, Shia found herself on the floor in front of a displacer beast, and it had taken her out with one attack and then attacked a second time, which is instantly failing 2 death saving throws. Prone on the floor, melee attack, instant crit, 2 death saving throws gone. And then it was her go again, it was her go straight after that. The initiative order was not great if you were, on the verge of death. And I failed. I just failed the death saving throw immediately. It was like, okay, roll. She's dead. And that was it. It was so quick. It was so fast. I didn't even really have time to react to it. I was just on autopilot. I was like, okay, I'll make the death saving throw and oh, my character's dead. She's just dead. That's it. She's gone. She is actually dead. And there's kind of a moment of just being like, the fuck do I do now? And it was a bad roll as well. It wasn't only just, I think it was a 2. It might have been a 1 or a 2 or something. It was a seriously, you have fucked this roll. And I was just kind of sat there for a moment, and there was just silence as everyone kind of went, oh God, what do we, what, I don't know what to do. It was so fast, it was so bad. And then Mike, DM, pointed out, you still have your Alter Fate, you can still use that. I was like, oh, thank God for that. Okay, yeah, that's fine, cool. So I did it. I changed the failed death saving throw to a 20, which it counts as a natural 20. Took a point of exhaustion, so man, it's not a great day, dying and getting exhausted. But yeah, I changed it, and so Shia got back up at 1 hit point. She got healed, we defeated the displacer beasts, we managed to stop the flow of exploding skeletons, and we were on our way. And it was one of those things where I just did it. It's a mechanic of the game. I got used to it at that point. It had been present for a while. I'd used it any number of times, usually for not, really not well thought out reasons, more just, she would want this guy dead. I will try and kill him with this. And it was only when I actually started to think about the ramifications of the way that mechanic worked. It's very easy to forget that when you're rolling a dice for an attack or something like that, you are essentially rolling what happens in the game, whether it's a hit or a miss or a glancing blow, whatever you want to describe not hitting, because just saying you miss every time is boring as hell. The way that worked in game, the way that it worked on the tabletop is roll a dice, didn't like the result, change it to whatever you like. The way that worked in game is stepping off the current path that you are on, deciding that this particular fate is not the one that you want. You need to find others. You need to find options. You need to find one where you succeed, where you have just failed. And so, with the roll being as bad as it was, the actual kind of in-game reality of it was that she had to step off that path where she was dying, where she just got ripped apart by a displacer beast. She was just opened up by it and just bled out all over the floor. She had to find a future, find a different fate that meant that didn't happen. But the roll was so shit. The roll that I changed was god awful. And so, reasonably, she would have to look at a lot of different fates. She would have to look at a lot of different futures. She would have to walk a lot of different paths to actually find one where she didn't get completely annihilated. And it's not just a case of walking them, but there's also the case of subjective time. So in the real world, like in the game world, the real, you know what I mean. When that happens to everyone else, like to the rest of the party, Shia just blurs slightly. There's like a moment she like blurs a little bit, and then things resume as normal. It's like half a second, if that. It's just, you notice it, that's it, gone. She could have been walking different paths to find the suitable end that she wanted for like minutes, if not hours in some cases, trying to find the right outcome. That's what gives her exhaustion. It's the fact that you are spending a significant amount of physical energy to essentially place yourself in multiple different futures to find the one that best suits your needs. When she got wrecked by Displacer Beast and died immediately, she had to then, as she was dying, step off that path, walk any number of other paths to try and find the one where she survived. And we worked out afterwards that with how bad the role was, and because the session ended pretty soon after this, with how bad the role was, and for the amount of time that she normally takes to travel the paths, she would have had to search a long time. Like, a hell of a long time. In the end, we thought to make it appropriate for how big a deal it was, to make it significant enough, it might well have been years that she was walking other futures to find the right fate. So half a second passes for the party. They see her go down, then they see her stand up again pretty much immediately. For her, years have passed. Not just years, though. Years of watching herself die and experiencing herself die in a multitude of different ways. Thousands upon thousands of times just getting killed by this Displacer Beast. You know, in all these different futures. Okay, what if I dodge that way? Nope, that kills me. Okay, what if I do... Nope, that kills me. Okay, what if I do... Nope, that kills me as well. That, but over and over and over and over and over and over again. For far longer than was ever to be expected. Like, that ability was not made for that. It wasn't created with that in mind. It wasn't something where it was like a get out of death free card. It was designed to influence small events to gain the most, to get the best outcome. But what Shea did was use it to cheat death, essentially. At the end of talking about it, at the end of thinking about it, there was no way that she could possibly withstand the mental and physical strain of doing what she'd done. You cannot walk for years basically in your own mind and not be affected by that. You cannot watch or experience yourself die thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times without having a severe impact. And so we decided, like I talked to Mike a lot about it because I just wasn't sure what to do. At one point I was tempted to have her just die in her sleep. We were going to take a long rest. I was tempted to have her just die in her sleep. Like the strain of it was just too much. She just couldn't handle it. She just shut down. The party would have woken up and she would have just been cold and lifeless, and any attempt to revive her would have failed. She just wouldn't want to come back. But I wasn't happy with that as an ending for the character. I wanted to try something different, and so she went insane. Her personality shattered itself. Like part of her personality, the kind of very protective side of her, because she was using a homebrew like oath, because I wanted an oath of protection, and I couldn't find an oath of protection in the books. Nothing that really properly suited it. I wanted to be able to shield people and heal people and take damage for them, and there just wasn't anything that really fit that build properly. Or at least to the extent that I wanted it to. It was a very selfless kind of oath that I wanted to take. And so that side of her basically insulated itself. So there was essentially now two personalities. There was a protective side of her, and then there was just the shivering, quivering wreck of what she used to be, which hated combat, hated weapons, couldn't stand the sight of blood, was permanently terrified of everything, and essentially was obsessed with thinking about her own death over and over again. Outside of combat, that side of Sheer was the one that was present. It was like the panic and kind of I guess the panic and desperate desire to survive was enough to override the protective side of her. But whenever they got into combat, the weak side of Sheer couldn't handle it. she just shut herself off, which meant the protective side of Sheer had to come in and protect the two of them. Without her actually stepping in and fighting, she most likely would have just died again straight away. So for a while, I had a character that was one person, but two separate personalities, one of which was out of combat, one of which was in combat. That was really difficult to keep track of, and although it did lead to some really fun moments for me, it was also very difficult to actually follow what I was doing. And, trying to keep track of what one side of her knew and what the other side didn't. Like, they couldn't see really what each other were doing. So when the protective side took over, the weak side of her just didn't know what had happened in the intervening time. So after every fight, there was a conversation of what the hell just happened? Oh my god, where are we? And, if the weak side saw something moving and immediately retreated, the protective side had to see it as well, otherwise they wouldn't know it was there. It got very confusing very quickly. So after a little bit, we kind of worked out that, hey, maybe they find a way to communicate with each other. They might find a way to break through the wall a little bit. They can see what each other is seeing. That takes away some of the barrier, which, if anything, made it more complicated in a way, because it meant that they could just crisscross. So in certain situations, one of them would just take over from the other one without any warning, which again was fun, but very hard to keep track of. I even introduced like a little piece of paper where I had one version on the other version. I'd turn it over to remind myself which one I was supposed to be at any given time. Eventually, the party moved on. She was a complete wreck. She got rid of the weapon that she'd been carrying for years in an attempt to try and shed some of her past. She was just completely out of it. Then we found out, thanks to the god that we had gone in to destroy, the god of the Abyss. We didn't destroy it, we just prevented the Abyss from taking over the material plane, which, is better than nothing. We found out via a representative of that god that the reason that Sheer had been selected to become a champion of fate is because she'd already been meddled with by another god. She was designed to create civil war among the orcs, and it was only the quick thinking of her parents essentially that stopped orc society from collapsing in itself, which then just drove her into more of a pit of despair. It's like, I'm insane, and now I find that the god of madness built me to be insane. There is no escaping this. What do I do? And so then I was like, this is way too much. It's getting so bad. I don't know what to do. Like, will she just leave? She'd probably just fucking kill herself at this stage. It's got really awful for her. And it was all just down to essentially the way that one dice roll completely changed the trajectory of the character, way beyond anything I would have thought. And we kind of, I talked to Mike again. I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how I'm supposed to react to this. And again, we kind of came up with a plan for it, whereby she essentially made the decision to kind of embrace it a little bit. We came up with a conversation that she had between herself, because there were still two personalities talking to each other and trying to like vie for control of the body. And they basically made the choice of, okay, well, we are on the verge of death. Like, we are going to get destroyed unless we do something. We need to work together. We need to get to the bottom of all of what's happening. We cannot do this in the state we're in. We need to get our shit sorted. And so they made the choice to try and actually embrace it a little bit and to kind of meld themselves back together, which they did successfully do, in a way, because it still isn't actually that simple. There are now still two personalities, but they are the same two personalities. That is a lasting side effect that is never going to change. It wouldn't be reasonable to change it. It was a magically induced effect, and therefore it would take powerful magic to reverse it if it was possible at all. So now Sheer has two personalities still, but they are the same personality. She has basically two copies of herself in her head. She can talk through either one. They share similar thought patterns. They often say the same things, but they are prone to talking over each other. So part of that is a flaw that she's developed, whereby she will literally say things out loud that she thinks she's thinking to herself in the form of a conversation, but actually no, the one that thinks it's thinking is actually talking instead. It's proven to be incredibly interesting, very challenging in a weird way, very hard to keep track of. But at the same time, the fact that so much can happen off one role, like one single role. Sheer was basically on track to just become just a paladin who was dedicated to protection. That was it. That was all she really did. I mean, even the use of the Altar Fate was starting to change into using it to protect people as opposed to using it to hurt people. It was using it to, make someone's attack fail. Stuff like that. Just that one moment, that one death, like a terrible failed death saving throw, completely changed everything. Because when we looked at what that simple mechanic of changing the dice roll actually meant in the game world, it was so significant we couldn't possibly ignore it. You couldn't just go, it was fine, nothing really happened. And as a result now, I'm playing a character that is completely different to what I thought I would be, and is completely different to what she started out as. She started out as just being relatively normal, a little bit maladjusted due to the upbringing that she had, but she was just a bit awkward, a bit quiet, very good at fighting, very protective of the people that she was around, because she never really had that much in the way of, friends or companionship growing up, and so now that she has that, she's very protective of it. She's gone from what I thought she would be, which is just someone who is all about helping those around her and fighting for those who are, in need, to this like erratic and strange person. I mean, I multiclassed into Warlock specifically because of it, and when I was looking at multiclassing into Warlock, I was like, right, what would be the best way to represent all of this shit? What would be the best way to kind of indicate like an embracing of madness and a kind of just a reflection of what she's become? And the thing is, you could min-max it, right? I mean, I'd already messed around with her oath, so she had things like, she's got like dissonant whispers in her oath because she is insane and believes that she needs to embrace insanity to become more powerful, to be able to fulfill her oath to her god. When I was looking at the Warlock patrons, it was like, well, I mean, suppose technically you could do Hexblade, you could do this, that, and the other. These would all work well, they'd have good synergy. She went Great Old One, because the Great Old One is weird and creepy and insane, and being able to talk to people mind to mind is like an extra layer of just mad that you wouldn't expect from that character. She's kind of gone from just determined to protect everyone in her group to fixating on one particular member of the group. So she protects that person more than any other. She has gone from attempting to not draw attention to herself to outwardly trying to provoke reactions from people, not because she wants to fight and not because she wants to be in conflict, but because she's slowly losing her grasp on what she actually is as a person. She wants to see how other people behave when presented with certain things. All of this probably sounds like I'm massively fucking the party over. It's all done with the thing of, I'm never going to do something that would completely screw everyone else up. There might be points where she'll push it a bit too far, where she'll say something that she shouldn't say, but it's always done in a situation whereby we can get out of it. It's kind of tricky, because on the one hand, I occasionally think, oh no, she'd go harder than this. But at the same time, there's three other people around the table, so I don't want to completely throw a spanner in the works. That being said, she also now is able to talk to people far better than she ever was, just because she has that burning curiosity to see what makes them tick. She is a lot better at negotiating. She's a lot better at intimidating. And yeah, it's strange. It's kind of hard to describe. It's very erratic. Like, there's a lot of caring for the people around her, but at the same time, really desperately wanting to find out how other people work, like how their minds work, how they react to things. Like, what if I say this? Okay, this guy's been really helpful. What if he's lying? How do I find out if he's lying? I'll intimidate him. There's no need to. They've already said what they were going to say. They're clearly on the right side. There's also like a physical appearance element to it, whereby her eyes are completely black at this point, and there's like kind of black scarring around her eyes and going across her temples, which is like a really obvious visual indicator that as a half-orc, something is severely wrong with this person. That should be something that is hidden all the time, but she will outright use it to try and get into people's heads. It will be a case of, this person needs to tell me something, they're not being honest. Okay, so the helmet that she has that covers her whole face comes off, and it is used as a tool just to see what makes that person tick, see what they're afraid of. It's very tricky playing an erratic character that is still kind of self-aware enough to know that there's something wrong. Like, that's the other thing as well. Something that I never wanted to really fully do was commit to making her 100% insane, so she didn't know what she was doing. I hate that. I hate that thing of, why did you press that obvious button that was clearly a trap? Oh, I'm insane, so I clicked it. I don't like that method of playing someone who is, who is actually insane. I just don't enjoy that way of doing it. If you do, that's fine. It's just not my style at all. I wanted there to be a level of self-awareness, like there to be a level of, just in the back of her head, like, what the hell did we just do that for? Like, we shouldn't have done that. Just that kind of, that little voice of reason, like there's a little part of it, it's looking at what's going on and looking at how erratic she's becoming, how keen she is to place herself in harm's way, how overprotective she is of one particular party member, of how she wants to push people's buttons, and is kind of sitting there reining it in a little bit, kind of going, you need to stop letting yourself go this far. You need to stop doing this. It's been really interesting so far and really fun. It's also been really heavy because, as you know, I've been like dealing with my own stupid like brain issues for a while. But we're now at a point in her kind of personal arc where we've returned to the place where she was held as a child. We've returned to this fighting pit. We're about to fight actually in that place. In the place where, the person that she used to have a very deep emotional connection to died. Which means that things could change again. Like, things could go different again. There could be a change in one or two of her personalities. She may end up getting some sort of closure and becoming better. Something disastrous might happen. She's going to meet the pit owner, the person who literally owned her like 10 years ago. So there's a whole load of stuff that could come from that. It's kind of tricky to play, but it's really fun as well. And it's one of those things where for a little while I was like, I should have just let her die. Like, it's way too much. It's way too much to keep track of. It's way too heavy to try and get yourself in the headspace of a character where one half is just desperate to keep them alive and the other half is obsessed with their own vision of their own death. But at the same time, it's kind of evolved so much and she's changed so much even in a short amount of time due to the ever kind of changing nature of madness itself, that I'm really glad I didn't, because I don't know where it's going to go. Like, I don't know where it's going to go still, but I really want to find out, because everything changed off one role, and everything that's happened after that has just been an evolution of what happened from that one role. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what happens. Well, on Monday, actually, when we actually have this massive arena fight, which should be awesome. Although having said that, I'm totally still multiclassing into Warlock no matter what happens, because I want Pact of the Blade, and I want to summon Soul Edge. So, why wouldn't you? Anyway, that went on for way longer than I thought it would. Just random ramblings about that particular instance of my D&D character going insane. So, if you enjoyed that, good. I'm glad you did. There might be more. We'll see what happens. And yeah, that is essentially what has happened to my half-orc paladin Sheer, who is... there's two of her now, but they're both the same person, but only in one body. But they do act independently. Can you see why I'm having trouble with this? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click any of the things, Patreon, subscribe videos, all that shit. Click if you like, don't click if you don't want to, and I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.